Welcome to episode 60 of the Rogue Bogues basketball series. Myself, Andrew Bogut, and Mike Procopio. What's going on, bro?
Oh, Bogues, it's another day in fucking fantasy land, man. What are you doing?
Just watching these NBA games, seeing how seeding's going to end up. It's getting, there's still a little bit of movement that can happen. So we're not going to break down the playoffs yet because we don't know who the seeds are going to be. I think Golden State can move. Dallas, Utah, Denver are in that little 3 to 6 lock where there could be a bit of argy-bargy around there. But otherwise, just following these games and seeing, who's going to match up where, bro.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people jockeying for position, especially like in the East. Like, no one wants to. I think that's like the two teams people don't want to play in the playoffs are sort of on that bottom 4 list. They don't want to play Toronto with the whole COVID thing. About not being able to play in Toronto. Yeah, and no one wants to get 7. No one wants to draw 7 because they don't want to draw the Brooklyn Nets. So
the 2 seed.
Yeah, so imagine that. Like usually the 7-8 seed are like, oh, fuck, hope we don't match up against these two. It's the higher seeds are like, fuck, should we throw this game tonight so we don't have to play Durant in the first round? It's crazy,
it looks
right?
like it will be Milwaukee, but we'll go through all that in a second. Team of the weeks, pro, for me, I'm going to go with Miami Heat. I think they had a horror run, obviously with the Jimmy Butler thing, everything going on. They hit that lull, but I think they've flipped it. They've now won 6 straight, 6-4 in their last 10 after they lost 4 or 5 straight, but they've turned it around. They've got the longest win streak in the league at the moment, I believe. They've just turned it back on at the right time, thankfully. They had to do this, I think, to give them any chance in the playoffs. Even though they're number 1 seed, I think you don't want to limp into a playoffs with all that turmoil. Even if they went 3-3 of these 6, you'd still be asking questions. But they win 6 straight. I think that's going to give them a nice little propel to the NBA playoffs, bro.
Yeah, teams, it's just a weird dynamic with the season. There's so many ups and downs to it. And, you could lose the reins of your season pretty quickly. And it seems like that they were sort of headed in that direction. And they finally, like you said, put it together. And after that stuff happened with Jimmy Butler and Spoelstra, they sort of put that behind them and they just sort of went to work and said, you know what, we don't want to be the Utah Jazz of the East. We don't want to be a dumpster fire. We want to go get into this thing with a chance to win. And, it was great because you didn't know if Boston was going to get the top seed, Milwaukee, and to win 6 straight and, to clinch the East. It's, they've been playing some good basketball for sure.
They have. Who you got?
San Antonio Spurs.
Okay, nice.
Because now everybody has something to talk about with the Lakers not being in. And now the Spurs sort of fight back. I don't think, it was sort of up and down to see if they were going to make it. They had a good week, clinched it. And for some reason now, 99% of the media don't know what happened with the Los Angeles Lakers, even though they've been, the biggest, dumpster fire in the NBA all season. But for some reason, like now all the media wants to say, hey, now all of a sudden what happened? But no, with the San Antonio Spurs, they've been playing well, and they had to come from behind. I mean, not a lot of people thought they were going to catch the Lakers. They kept in it. They kept focused with it. Not a great season at 34-46, but enough to get into the play-in. To me, it's a good testament of people not quitting. Coach not quitting, players not quitting. Everybody staying in and trying to grind this thing out instead of a chance to get a top pick in the draft lottery. They said, you know what, fuck it, we're going to get into the play in and see what happens. So no, that doesn't happen a lot in the NBA. That's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, them and the Pelicans really. They're both in that boat where they, Pelicans obviously it means much more to them to actually get in because they've just had a horror last few years. Spurs have a lot more and kind of trophies in that cabinet the last 20 years. But the Spurs, I've liked the way they've played. I think they're a talented team. They're young. They play the right way, but they're just not talented enough to make a deep run, but it's good to see them in and kind of the polar opposites of what the Lakers did. The Spurs 7-3 in their last 10 and the Lakers 2-8 in their last 10. Kind of the most important games of the season if you wanted to get into that play-in, but I don't think the play-in was high on the priority list for the Lakers either. Not an excuse, but it just seemed like their season was done. A month and a half, 2 months ago. Once they knew they couldn't get in that 7 or that 6. and it was just plummeting. It was just painful to watch. So, yeah.
I think the play-in is going to be good though for the Spurs because like Murray gets another whack at it. Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Podol, our boy Londale, so, it gives your young players a good thing to play for and sort of gives them a little bit of playoff experience, even though it may or may not be all that long. I mean, who knows? Like, I'm not, besides maybe Minnesota and depending on what's going on with the Clippers, like there's no one that the Spurs could be afraid of. They can come out of there with the 8 or the 7. Who knows coming out of that deal? But I think it's always good for the young guys to sort of experience that and sort of, play for something, playoff experience. So next year, if you're trying to battle for it, you could help. It sort of could help them going forward. But yeah, but no short of tomfoolery in this league with that Lakers stuff.
We'll see. We'll get to some real deep Lakers stuff soon. But team of the week, my bad team of the week. I'm still the Chicago Bulls. I think they're the first team to go back to back of our team of the weeks, and they look bad. 3-7 in their last 10, lost 4 straight. They're limping into the playoffs. Get this, Pro, that they have the worst, the top 6 worst records since All-Star break, Pro. 1 to 5 are all lottery teams. 6 is the Chicago Bulls. So that, the 1 to 5 is your Portlands and, your teams that are Detroit that are blatantly tanking for a pick. They're all above the Bulls, 5 of them, lottery teams. 6 is the Bulls' worst record since All-Star break. It does not look good. They're getting punched in the face. They're not responding to any runs really in games. When they keep it close for the whole game, they're in games. They have a chance to win. But it seems like the last 2 months, as soon as a team punches them, they just fall. They lose by 10 or 15, and even if they're down 10 or 15 in the fourth, they'll grind their way back to 8 or 7 and then still lose. And it doesn't look good. They've fallen from grace. They were number 1 in the East at one point, bro. Remember that? A long time ago.
Yeah.
And they were top 4 for most of the season. And this is a testament to how brutal the NBA season is for all the people listening. Is one bad month can kill you, and they've dropped from the top 4 finish to a clear 6 seed. Like they're 3 games behind 5, so they're a clear 6 seed. It looks like it's going to be Boston or Philly, depending on how these next 2 games go. But I'm not liking the Bulls. I mean, I don't like them. I don't think they'll have any chance against, and I don't like Philly neither. I don't think they're as good as people think. But I think they face Philly. Philly's bouncing them quite easily, Pro. But they're my team of the week.
Bogues, what the fuck is going on with them though? Like even they're like the Utah Jazz of the East. It's like they're playing well most of the first half of the season. I mean, they didn't play anyone great because I remember you coming up with that stat. They were like 2-16 versus like winning teams or something like that. But like they had everything going for them. Zach LaVine gets a little bit hurt, and I think Ball's out, and it just goes to show you probably what Ball means to that team and how valuable he is. But it's a I don't think people understand how delicate an NBA season is. Where like same thing with wins. Like you get 2 or 3 losses in a row, maybe you win 7 out of 10, and then you get into a stretch where like, all right, you lost this game by chipping at the buzzer. You had this 14-point lead, then the next game you end up blowing that, and then it just can snowball into this like clusterfuck. And with Chicago, it's nuts because they got this good coach. Donovan's a very good coach. They've got good players. DeMar DeRozan, some of the things he did this year was ridiculous. Vucevic, Ball, LaVine, got a good bench, and it's just. To me, I just don't understand what's going on with them. You can't really put your finger on it. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you have, but I mean, they've got this good team that you think they could sort of make a run, and they're just, like I think everything's pointing towards a sweep. Them getting swept in the first round, which means if I'm telling them you're getting swept, they might be in the NBA Finals. And my track record of picking teams, but. It's weird. It's just a weird feeling what went on with this Bulls team all year.
No doubt. Yeah, it's just they've been the ultimate yo-yo of a team. So it'll be interesting to see if they can flick that switch in the playoffs, but I doubt it. They haven't been that group has never been to the playoffs together. There's a lot of hype in them early. I wasn't sold on it early. They surprised me, definitely. I didn't think they'd be this good. I thought they'd scrape into the playoffs. I thought they'd be probably maybe a playin, but they've overachieved in my books. But I'm not confident. I mean, maybe they steal a game, maybe they get 2, but they're not winning a playoff series. Who you got?
I got the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. Cleveland's sort of been falling down, and I know they've had injury issues this year, and they overachieved a little bit, and they were pushing. JB Bickerstaff did a great job with that group, but they had a rough week. Now they lost to Brooklyn, but they also lost to Orlando at Orlando. And come on, man, if you're a team that's sort of you want to be a non-play-in team, you got to be able to go in Orlando and beat them. And Orlando's one of the worst teams in the league. Yes, they're fighting and scrapping, but like you go in there and you lose that. It's just they're sort of heading for it. It's like they won I think they won 2 out of their last 10. They lost 3 in a row. I don't know where they're headed either because they had such a good run. Now Jared Allen's been out. Obviously, they lost Sexton all for the year. They're sort of on a shoestring. They got Karis LeVert and all, but this team's really not going anywhere in a great direction. I don't know if it's as much of a shit show as Chicago is, but they're sort of heading not in a great direction, heading towards the playoffs. I don't mind if a team sort of, gets a funky in February, March, and has a bad month. But as long as you rebound by the last half of March, early April, I don't mind it. Every team goes through their ups and downs, but it just seems like they're not really trending, in the right direction at the right time. So I think it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, they've struggled too. They've been similar to the Bulls. They were top 4 for a bit as well up there in the East, and they've fallen from grace down to 8 and lost 3 in a row, 2 and 8 in their last 10. Their lineups have been janky with injuries. I don't know if they're resting guys or being a bit conservative, but they can't afford to do that. They haven't been in the playoffs for a while, for a number of years since LeBron left. So you want them to get some kind of consistency and feel for how they're playing together. And yeah, they're definitely another team that they were on in my sights. But the Bulls for me were taking the cake as far as their fall from grace. All right, playing games, pro. Let's talk about those because we'll do playoffs next week once it's a bit more solidified. Who do you have coming out of the East?
Coming out of the East, playing?
Yeah. So you got Brooklyn, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Charlotte.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brooklyn. I'm going to go with Brooklyn and Charlotte for these two coming out.
Oh, wow. Charlotte.
Yeah, I'm going to go Charlotte. Yeah.
They're playing
Scrappy
well.
bunch, young kids, playing okay. Look, no one's playing great out of those 3. Atlanta's finally showing some life. They'll probably get out. But you know what? I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Charlotte because every fucking team I take is going to lose anyway. But I think if I took Atlanta, they'd be doomed. So maybe give Charlotte a shot. But I think they got a chance. Although I hope the games don't go overtime. I'm just looking here on NBA.com. They're 0-7 in overtime games this year with the Hornets. I didn't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. Do not go to overtime.
No. Who you got for you two?
Brooklyn's the obvious one. I think as of right now, it's looking like Brooklyn, Cleveland, 7-8, but they're all Brooklyn's. They're all one game within each other. So the last day of the season can actually, change these seedings still, which is kind of crazy. I'm not sure about all the tiebreakers, so I won't get into all that. But Brooklyn definitely, I think, is through. So you're ruling Cleveland out. So you're saying Cleveland's going to lose to either Atlanta or Charlotte. I think Atlanta get through. I think they've played better the last month. They've been in these positions before. I like the plains just for the fact that it feels very international Olympic-y, where it's one game. So I like that. You're not easing into, we'll get them. We lost the first game. We'll adjust and make some adjustments. Like, no, this is your adjustment. You lose this, you're home for the summer. So I'll go Brooklyn and Atlanta, the obvious ones. And yeah, I think. Just speaking about Brooklyn, I penned an article. Today, it came out today in the Sydney paper, just talking about Brooklyn's chances, and I basically said I don't have them winning the championship. I don't think they'll be there at the end. A main reason why is I just don't think they've played together enough, bro. I think they're one of the most talented teams as far as I think KD's one of the best scorers, pure scorers of all time. Like, get me a bucket from any spot on the floor. I've said this for years. I think Kyrie's one of the best, flashiest ball handling scorers that we have in the league. But I just don't think, Kyrie in and out, KD's been hurt, then James was in and out at the start of the season, then they trade him. Their lineups have been all over the place. They get Seth Curry now. Patty Mills has gone to the bench. His minutes have dried up. Then Drummond comes in and starts. I just think they haven't got enough consistency playing together to figure out, like, hey, I need to have my teammates back here because this is his weakness, or hey, my teammate here likes that spot on the floor, so I'm going to get him the ball there. Just those little nuances that you pick up in 82 games of regular season. I don't think the talent outweighs that. I think they could potentially still scare Milwaukee or a Boston, depending on who's in that 2 seed. They might even get through the first round after the play-in, but I just don't think they have enough to go into that playoff deep run. And then Ben Simmons, my point was that even if he comes back off a bad back, I don't think he's going to be as helpful as they think, because, as a guy that's had back issues, Ben's whole game is relying on athleticism and power and strength. And you come back off a back, he doesn't have the luxury of being a Steph Curry or a Joe Harris or someone who can, I've still got a 3-ball that you need to respect. I can still be out and contribute. He has to work real hard for everything. So even if he comes back, I don't think he'll contribute as much as people think coming off that back, just based on the injury. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the Nets, but some people still think that they got a chance to go deep. And I just think that whole consistency culture thing is going to probably hurt them at the end.
Yeah, I mean, what are they looking at now? They're looking at playing, if they say they win, so they say they get out of the play-in, which I think we believe they will at the 7 seed. And then they got to play Milwaukee, which is going to be, I mean, my thing is, I feel as though they can get to the finals or they're going to lose to Milwaukee in the first round. I don't think there's really going to be a middle ground for them. I think they're going to either get it going. See, this is, I wouldn't even play Ben Simmons, to be honest. Like, he needs a lot of work. He needs a lot of he needs a 20-point lead coming into the season to be comfortable and ease his way in. I don't think a pressure situation of playoff basketball is going to be his first taste of basketball this year. And I don't think he could respond well to that. I think with his back, I think that's going to be an issue. Then it's remember, I don't know if you remember this, when Amari Stoudemire had that microfracture surgery, and then he came back in the playoffs for Phoenix, and he looked I mean, come on. He looked I look better on a fucking runway on a modeling agency than he did in the court. And I think that Ben Simmons would not be a good situation for him. I don't think you'd be putting him in the greatest situation to let him play. I do think they have talent and they have enough to make a run. And then when things go, they can go. Drummond's played well for him. Curry's played well. Obviously, KD and Irving. I mean, this is why you don't make that trade in the first place. You could have had all your guns coming into this thing and you could have looked a lot better going into it. Yeah, I understand your questions and your doubts. I don't know. Like I said, I wouldn't play Simmons. I think that fucks your team up more than anything, because I think he needs a training camp and all that. But that'll be interesting, man. Because they got to play Milwaukee and then they play, the winner of Boston and what do you
Chicago,
play? Boston, Chicago there. Or Boston, yeah. So
whoever
that's going to be an interesting one. Yeah,
I agree. I think they're talented. I think they're talent. I'm not arguing their talent. I'm arguing that I just don't think they've played together enough. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think that's valuable going into a playoff series. I think, they can roll it out, in games, big games, with KD getting 40 and Kyrie going crazy. But in a 7-game series against a tough, grinded out team like a Miami or a Milwaukee, I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. So I'm interested to see how deep they go. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but that's just my feel as far as I think you need to play together. And I think we see that with certain teams out there, Memphis, Phoenix, even Miami to an extent. They've played together. They've got their rotations down. They know their roles for the most part, unless you're Jimmy Butler. But I think that helps. That helps over the course of a season. All right, out west, we have Minnesota in 7, The Clippers in 8. This all looks like it's not going to... No, this can't change. 9 is the Pelicans and 10 is the Spurs. Who do we have, Pro? Who do you have?
I'm just going to go with the favorites here. I'm going to go with Minnesota, LA. They're to me, they're just a step ahead of New Orleans and San Antonio, to be honest. I think that I could see those two guys coming out of it. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think the Clippers have a chance to beat Minnesota in that first round. I really do. I think Minnesota's tough, but young team, haven't really been deep in the playoffs for a number of years, haven't been to the playoffs in a number of years. A lot of young stars. They play real well. But the Clippers, they've got that old head kind of mentality, a bit of veteran leadership where they're a little bit more poised at times. I don't think they panicked much during this season, as bad as their lineups have been. They arguably shouldn't even be in the 10 with the injury run they had. Some of the lineups they were putting out there for 2 or 3 week stretches were tough lineups to win games, and they continued to win some games and stayed in contention 40-40 for the season as of time of recording. So I think the Clippers might have a chance, but yeah, I think Minnesota then will not lose to the Pelicans or Spurs. I don't think so. I think that's pretty cut and dry, but it is one game, and we could be wrong about both of them, and it could go the opposite way. But yeah, I'm excited for these playing games. I think we were both on the fence kind of the rule a couple of years ago when it came in, but I think it's actually not a bad thing because it gives those an extra 2 teams something to play for, and they can salvage some sort of success out of a season. A la the Pelicans had a horror run this year, again with injuries and whatnot, up and down, then made the trade, and now they're making a little run. They can have a little bit of success for their fans. It's something to build for in the off-season. One thing I want to do is give me your most disappointing team from both conferences that didn't make the playoffs. So let's go with the West first. The candidates are the Lakers, the Kings, the Trailblazers, the Thunder, and the Rockets. Which one of those teams do you think should have been in the 10? I think it's pretty obvious, and was the most disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Lakers, that's the most disappointing team. Regardless of how you thought they were going to be, some people thought they'd challenge for a championship, but forget about that. But at least get into the top 6. You would think that was like something they should have easily done. And for them to finish 11, that's obvious. I think the Lakers have proven that they've been. There's a couple of teams on that list, like Houston, Oklahoma, no one expected anything out of. Sacramento, you expected more fight. Now they dismantled their team with the Halliburton trade, so I understand that. And Portland was going to be a dumpster fire. You knew that, going in, and they had the injury issues and made those trades, and now they were just tanking for the bottom. So I say the Lakers. Who do you got, both?
Pretty easy one. Yeah, definitely the Lakers. They should have been. You got to at least get in the 10, like at a bare minimum. I know you're saying top 6, but at a bare minimum, you got to be in that 10. Like the fact that all the talent, veteran leadership they have on that roster, they got championship merit on that roster from a couple of years ago. Injuries aside, Davis being out, whatever, they should have still been in that 10. So that was the most disappointing there. Out east, the candidates, Magic, Pistons, Pacers, Wizards, and Knicks. Now, the obvious one, obviously, would be the Knicks, considering how they went last season. But I'm going to go with the Wizards. I think they were in the box seat to make the 8 at one point, and they fell from grace once again, kind of a la Chicago Bulls. They just had a horrendous last couple of months. They did have some injuries there, but they look like they were, going to be a surprise team of the year at the start of the season and even up until New Year's. But I think they still should have made the 10. They really dropped off, and I think they've gone horrifically under 500 the last 2 months of the season, which hasn't helped them. But who's your disappointing team in the East?
I expected more out of the Indiana Pacers. From the dumpster fire they had as a team last year, to hire in Carlisle, and you thought that they could salvage something, and they had all the weapons that they needed. Sabonis and Turner and Brogdon, and T.J. Warren was hurt and whatnot, but Chris Duarte, and you expected a lot more out of the team. Obviously, they had injury issues, and they made the trade. There really wasn't going to be anything that they could really do to help that team. It's not like they should have been a top 2 or top 3. That team was probably going to be in the play-in, but mid, maybe that 8-9 seed battling for. I think I had them anywhere from 8 to 10, and they were disappointing. I'm not really pointing the finger on what really transpired with that for them to sort of fall short, but I expected more out of that because I thought Rick would have got more out of them. And again, injuries and stuff and trades you can't really deal with, but sometimes you have no control over it. But I expected more out of them. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think Indiana's definitely a candidate. We knew Orlando and Detroit to an extent weren't going to be good this season. But yeah, the Pacers, the Wizards, the Knicks all could have been coin flip in that 10. Cavs, I think, surprised all of us jumping up that quickly, so they stole a spot, and then Charlotte obviously stole a spot that some people didn't have them in this quickly. So yeah, interesting. The East is probably starting to become a little bit deeper at the bottom end than the West. You could argue. I think the Pistons are going to be better next season. I think the Pacers should be better, so I think they'll get a little bit deeper than what the West is, but the West obviously still has some very good teams up top. All right, let's get on to our awards. I know you love doing these, Pro.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
We're going to go with the MVP first. The obvious ones, Giannis, Embiid, Jokic is the three. I don't think anyone else is even close in fourth. Embiid's just locked up the points per game leader for the season. So he's leading the league in scoring. I think he's going to lock that up. I don't think that's going anywhere. Giannis having another hell of a year. This is going to be one of the hardest MVP races, I think, that we've had on record for the last 10, 15 years. I really do. I think these three, I couldn't overly be pissed with any of these three picks, in my opinion, but I'm going with Jokic again. I think going back to the point I made 2 or 3 months ago, I truly believe if you put Giannis and Embiid on that Denver Nuggets roster with that exact roster with the injuries, I don't think they're in 6 in the West. And that's what I'm putting it down to. I think he's made, an MVP is about the numbers, no doubt, and we know it's about what are your numbers looking like, what are the analytics, all that kind of bullshit. But an MVP is also what do you do for your teammates? And he's got some guys on that roster looking much better than they really are. And I think that's a testament to how good he is, the style of basketball he plays. And I think he's a really, really good teammate. And I'm going on record to say that I think he would be my pick. But like I said, if Embiid or Giannis got it, I definitely can't argue with that either. Who do you have?
I have Jokic myself. It is a really close one. No one's really talking about Giannis that much. It's usually like if you're on Twitter and you see the battles going on with MVP talk, Embiid, Jokic. It's just a 2-man race, it seems like, even though Giannis is having a hell of a year. I agree. Like, I think that what Jokic has done, and I think you and I would agree, no Murray, no Porter, you're basically doing it with, reserves basically besides obviously Aaron Gordon and Jokic, and Barton, but you're missing so much of your team, and yet there's still, they're still at the 5 seed and 5, 6 or what have you, and you're battling, and you could maybe even win a round in the playoffs, and he's doing it not by himself, but he's just not only going to town scoring wise and putting up numbers, but also, getting easy opportunities for his teammates and putting them in positions to win. And that's the thing. Like when you're talking about, well, this guy should be the MVP, and Jokic is a 5 or a 6 seed, whatever, and this guy, Embiid's a 3 seed, or Giannis is a 2 seed. But yet, put those 2 guys on that team, and how do you imagine that going? And this guy has really risen the level, not only of his play, but everybody around him, like you just said. And I mean, to put them in a good position at the 5 or the 6 going into the playoffs is a hell of a fucking job. And I think that he deserves the MVP based on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And, I'm interested to hear what our followers and listeners think, because it is a tough one to pick. And, it's going to be fun. Going to be fun to see who. First of all, it's going to be fun to see which people pick someone that wasn't one of those 3. As we see every time of the voting, once it gets leaked and someone gets some media person or someone gets abused because like, how the hell did you vote for, Bismack Biyombo? But
no doubt,
that's going to happen. But I think it's just a good close race. I think it's a healthy race, and I think either of those 3 You can't go too wrong, in my opinion. I'd still keep Giannis in there because they have a hell of a year. Defensive Player of the Year, Pro. Who do you have?
Defensive Player of the Year. You know what, Bogues? Who do you have?
Who do I have?
I like to see your
I have
pick.
Mikal Bridges. I do.
Yeah.
I think Marcus Smart's up there. I think Gobert's fallen out a little bit because they haven't played as well. Draymond Green hasn't been healthy. Marcus Smart's I think he's the favourite. But I'm going with Mikal Bridges because they are one of the best defensive teams in the league. They have the best record in the league, and they're on autopilot. And he gets the task of guarding their best wing every night, their best guard, and does a fantastic job with it. And I think it helps that he has guys like Chris Paul next to him. Look, Devin Booker's not classified as a great defender. I think he's improved. I think he's gone from a defender that wasn't always locked in every night because he's a scorer to a probably a average to a little bit above average defender now. He's locked in a little bit because of Chris Paul, because of Mikal, because of Aiden. But Mikal Bridges, for me, he's on the best team in the league. I think he deserves to get the nod this season. Pro, you?
I'm going to go with Marcus Smart. I mean, Marcus, look, that team was sinking like the Titanic early on in the year. You and I think we spent a lot of time bashing those guys for good reason. And like he was the only guy really battling on defense. Robert Williams as well too, but like he really helped change whatever they were going through, whatever entitled bullshit that was going on that team early on. That obviously he voiced his opinion throughout the year in press conferences and in interviews, and he got those guys. Udoka obviously did it too, but like. You could tell that he was frustrated as hell, and he goes out there and he busts his ass and he shuts guys down. That whole team is on a defensive mentality kick. I think they're the best defensive team in the league, if I'm not mistaken. And, I give a lot of credit to him. I mean, he has to guard the best guy every night. Tatum's not really given all that much help on the defensive side. Brown does a little bit, but, Marcus Smart is, to me, that team isn't where they are today if it's not for him. And I give him a lot of credit for what he's done. I'm a big Dorian Finney-Smith fan. I just don't think he's good enough to sort of get that award. But Thibault, boy from Australia as well. But I'm gonna go with Marcus Smart.
Yeah, he's overwhelming favorite with bookies, and you are a Boston crony, so it makes total sense, Pro.
Get the fuck out of here.
But I think Mikal is just one that's from left field a little bit. Wasn't spoken about early on in the season as a front runner for the award, and I think their record and Phoenix are my pick for championship favourites as of today. So I think we'll watch that space. All right, Coach of the Year, Pro. Who do you have?
Oh wow, Taylor Jenkins. Memphis Grizzlies. He's done a great job. Look, he's that team is a good team. Don't get me wrong. John Morant and whatnot, but like what he did with that team to get to the 2 seed is amazing. And I don't think anybody really expected much out of the Memphis Grizzlies the last couple of years. I think he's done an amazing job, getting everybody on the right track, developing talent, and, making that team to the level to overachieve the level they're doing now. I really like Jason Kidd and what he did in Dallas, winning 50 plus games for the first time in a long time. In that organization. But I think that Jenkins has done an excellent job with not only, like I said, bringing that team to a 2 seed, but also developing a lot of role players into elevating their role there. So, hats off to him. I think he's done a great job.
Yeah, other notables that are in the running, Eric Spoelstra, obviously, Nick Nurse for the Toronto Raptors. I think they've overachieved. Miami Heat are obviously first, so you got to put them in. Monty Williams, them being first again, and Jason Kidd's done a good job with the Mavs. But I'll agree with you. I think Jenkins has done a fantastic job. Or when you factor in that their record without John Morant, which we've spoken about, is even better. With that, a lot of that has to do with coaching. It's very hard in this league to lose an All NBA caliber player for stretches in a season and continue on like nothing happened. Usually, you'll have a game or 2 or 3 after that injury where guys sustain it, but then it catches up with you, or, vice versa. Roles change a little bit. All of a sudden, I'm handling the ball now, more pressure on me, or I'm not touching it as much, or vice versa. A lot of that's to do with coaching, in my opinion. He's done a fantastic job, and he deserves that award, in my opinion. They're clear number 2. They locked that seat up, a week or so ago, and they're a fun team to watch, man. They have some spirit about them, some edginess, some talent. I think they've got a lot of good pieces to make a deep run. It will be very interesting to see where that all goes with them, but he deserves that award. Rookie of the Year, Pro. I've got this down to two guys now. I have this down to Mobley and Scotty Barnes, and the reason why is I'm basing it on wins. I'm basing it on team success as much as I am individual. Katie's putting up really good numbers on a bad team, but he's missed the most games due to injury out of those three. I mean, Giddey was in the running, but I think the injury hurt him late, and their team's not that good. But Evan Mobley, 14.9 points a game, 8.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and Scotty Barnes, 15.4 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. I think it's a coin flip between those two. And like I said, I based that on the fact that both their teams are playoffs / plains, whereas the other guys that were in the running or are in the running, I think they're putting up good numbers on a bad team, which I take into consideration. Pro, who do you have?
I took Cunningham, and I understand where you're coming from with the wins thing and those other guys. Scotty Barnes has played really, really well, and really helping a really good playoff team, and Mobley as well. And Mobley's done a great job. Almost like a little bit like a Chris Bosh type. The way he plays, and he's going to be a really good player for a long time. I like Cunningham. The numbers he's put up, it's on a bad team. It's not really not his choice. I don't think any of those three are guys that are going to really put a team on their back to get to the playoffs or whatnot. They all need a little help. But I think Cunningham is the best player, best talent. He's done really well. Yeah, he's coming from behind with the whole, injury thing and missing. I think he's played like 62 games. So, but I do think he's going to be a hell of a talent. I think he's had a really good year. If it was like in the 50s, I'd say, probably scrap it. But he played 62. It's sort of like borderline of enough games for me. But I think he's the best player, the best rookie in the class, and for this season.
Yeah, he's 17. He's 17, 5 and 5. So his scoring is a little bit better, but his rebounds are less, and then his assists are better than the other two candidates. But I definitely can see how people can go that route. But I just value winning a little bit more. So it will be interesting to see how they vote with that one, because there's been some ups and downs.
Well, you don't trust the process, Bogues? What the fuck?
I trust the process. No, the rookie ladder itself has just gone up and down throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm all for tanking, Bogues. Fuck it. Who wants to win anymore?
Yeah, but there's an argument to be made. If you're tanking, would a Cunningham be playing the same minutes for the Raptors? Would a Josh Giddey be playing the same minutes for a Golden State if he got drafted there, right? So then the numbers are going to be affected. So that's my point with that. When you're a tanking team, it's in the team's best interest to play that guy they drafted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 40 minutes a game through his mistakes. But whereas if a team that's top 5 in a playoff race lucked out and got a top 5 pick, a la Wiseman, or something like that, the minutes aren't there as much and the numbers definitely go down. So it's an argument for the ages, Pro. It's an argument for the ages. All right, most improved player. The favourite right now is Ja Morant. So the question for me to you is, should he even be eligible, Pro? This isn't a guy that was a slouch last season. Look, he has made a pretty good jump. He was 19.1, 7 and 4 last season. He's at 27.6, 6 and 5 this season. So his scoring has jumped about 8 points. But should he be eligible?
It's a good question. That's a good question. I say that he should not be eligible. I mean, look, and here's my reasoning behind it. First of all, he's one of the top picks in the draft. So it's not like a guy that, it's not like Jalen Brunson that was drafted in the second round, right? And then now he's putting up these humongous numbers. Ja Morant was one of the best players in the draft. He's expected to be really good, not to this level. I mean, the guy's killing it right now. I just think that those players that you have to look at, like, where they were drafted, where their talent was last year versus this year. And yes, he has made a huge jump. But I think for the most improved player, it's a player that's sort of like a jabroni, a ham and egger, like a guy that's sort of like no one really expected much of, and he improved his score in like 8.5 points a game. He's a guy that came out of nowhere to be second team all defense. He's a guy that, just sort of picked his game up to a really high level where no one really expected much of him. and he really over-delivered. If Morant was drafted at 17, for sure he should be. Even if he was the best player on Memphis, drafted 17, 18, 19, the guy was like the second pick in the draft. To me, I think that it's like you do have an expectation for somebody who's drafted in that realm. But fuck am I to comment? Who am I to say? But that's just me. What do you think?
Oh, no, I agree. Yeah, I don't think he's not. There needs to be some sort of protocol for it. I'm not sure. Obviously, he fits the rules, but yeah, when you're going from 19 a game to 27 and you're a top 5 pick, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be in the running, in my opinion. But he is. He's the overwhelming favorite as per bookies. The other candidates, Jalen Brunson, like you said, but he's not actually in the top 3 as per the bookies. So I usually look at what they're looking at, and they're usually pretty right. Darius Garland's the other one. He's gone from, and he's another one. He had a pretty good year last season. He was 17.4 last season. He's up to 21.7 this season. His assists have jumped up to what are his assists at? His rebounds.
8.6. Oh, rebounds are 3.3 from 2.4.
That's right. Yep. So he's jumped up from 8.7 to 6.1 on assists. So he's made reasonable jumps. But I mean, my pick, pro, I'm going with Desmond Bane, Ja Morant's teammate. He's made arguably the biggest jump. He was last season 9.2 points, 3 odd rebounds, 1 assist. He's gone to 18.2 points. So he's arguably made the biggest jump in scoring out of any of the candidates. And he's gone from single digits to double digits, which I think is important for most improved, because when you go from double digit to double digit, I'm like, are you really that most improved? But he's a guy that I would pick. He's 18.2 a night, 4.5 rebounds, almost 3 assists, 1.2 steals. He's a surprise package that not a lot of people thought would make a jump like this quickly. And he's an integral part of their identity and what they're doing. I love the way he plays, a little nugget guy, Kyle Lowry type. He's got that kind of body, but really nice 3-point shot. Can score down, can score, and I'm picking him as a flyer. I think he's definitely got a chance.
No, he's really good, and he's one of those guys that has a ginormous chip on his shoulder as far as people passing him up on the draft, and I thought he's done a great job. He's especially with Ja Morant being out, like the where he sort of elevated his game to really help those guys. Win a bunch of games without Morant in, and to a guy who's like a role player, spot up shooter, could do a little bit more. That's the expectation, to now be this guy that can carry a team when your best player's out. I think that really says a lot about you as far as where you are as a player, and I think that was excellent. I think he's done a great job. And I think he's a really good player. Good pick, by the way. I thought about him a little bit, but not really. I like Brunson, and I thought I was going to take him, but Garland really, same thing. Like Garland was a decent high pick, but how he elevated his game when Sexton was out, and he really carried that team and really put that team on his back to give them a top 4 seeding at one point, and did really, really well. I didn't expect much out of that team when Sexton went down. And I think that's where and the same thing with Brunson, why I liked him, because he elevated his game when he needed to, when Luka was out, or they really needed his offensive help, and not expecting a lot from him offensively to be a guy who could score 20, 25, or 30. But I like Garland. I thought he's done really well. I mean, he handled the extra load on his shoulders. Like, he handled that really well. I thought he really stepped his game up and put them in a position to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty close, but I'm all for if it's Garland or Bane. I think it's pretty good, but the other guys, I think might be an asterisk if there's a Ja Morant win. It might be that whole Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell Rookie of the Year debate again. You might have one of those things going. Sixth Man of the Year. I don't think we need to debate this. Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero, end of story. Put a line through it. He's 20 points, 5 and 4 a night off the bench. So, look, I mean, there's other guys that there's no point talking about. Let's be honest. No offense to them. He's had a hell. Jordan Clarkson's still kind of in the mix. But I think he's had a hell of a season off the bench. He arguably could be starting for a lot of teams in the NBA, but they've brought him off the bench. He's playing a valuable role for them in what they're doing in Miami, and I think that's a no-brainer, right?
Who is your second? Did you have a second?
I didn't really even have it. I mean, could you have Brunson?
How about Jordan Poole?
Yeah, but he started for some games, didn't he? Yeah, that's the other one. Jordan Poole's definitely...
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Poole for most improved as far as someone to thinking about most improved. No. Coming off the bench, you're right. He did start a bunch. And so did Brunson. So that's why I didn't even think about Brunson for sixth man. I think Harrow was ridiculously, ahead of the pack on this one.
Yeah.
I can't even, I don't really have another player that was even close, to be honest with you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, that's a no-brainer. We don't have to discuss that. And one that isn't discussed very often, the NBA Executive of the Year, Pro. I'm sure you've done a lot of research into this. The top three, as per the bookies, Arturas
Karnisovas.
Yep. Zachary, that's Chicago Bulls. Zachary Kleiman from the Grizzlies and Pat Riley from the Heat. Who's your pick, Pro?
Yeah, that was a good one.
If it is out of those three, I mean, you might have a flyer for us. Maybe you go Rob Pelinka. I do not
have Rob Pelinka. It was close, but Rob did not make that final cut. I'm going to go with Memphis. I think that the Grizzlies has done a great job putting those little pieces together. Karnisovas has done a very good job, don't get me wrong. But see, to me, Bogues, when you just spend and get those players, when you just use them, just basically spending money to get them, to me, it's like you use your cap room basically to get Levine or the trades and stuff. But to get DeRozan and to get Vucevic and stuff. Yeah, you made trades and stuff, I guess. I think Memphis has done a really good job with, getting those junkyard dog type players and getting guys that are under the radar and, Steven Adams and bringing, guys like him in. And I thought they did an excellent job. Look, all those three deserve, I think it's a really close race, but I think Memphis has done a great job.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Kleiman's he's my pick as well. I think Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year. I think even the Adams trade, for instance, had a lot of people scratching their heads. People were like, why? Why do they do that? What was the point?
I love Adams, yeah.
But that they saw something that a lot of teams did, and a perfect role-playing big next to that doesn't need the ball or want the ball, that will play next to those guards in Bane and Triple J and Morant and whatnot. So I think he's the front runner. I agree with you on Arturas a little bit. They just spent their cap and got talented players, but I didn't think it was going to fit as well as it has, but it has. So you give him credit there. And Pat Riley and the Heat, I think Pat Riley and the Heat they're just caught in that. They're just always so good, so he never gets an award kind of thing, because they're just solid every season. They make good moves. I think the front office ever really makes huge mistakes down in Miami. So they do a very, very good job. All right, there's a new award, Pro. There's a new award. It is the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Social Justice Champion Award. Question for you, Pro. How many of these do you think I would have got if it was around when I played?
I think as many as I would have gotten the NBA Most Fit Coach of the Year award. I think it would have been neck and neck. So I'm not a big Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fan. As far as his talent was off the charts, like one of the most underrated superstars you'd ever want to see. No one really gives him sort of the due that he deserved. But as far as what kind of human being he was when he played. And what I read that book by Jeff Pearlman, Showtime, and it really takes an in-depth look at the Lakers. It's actually that TV show that's on right now on HBO, whatever, that everybody's going nuts about. He was the one that was based on that book. If you read that book about a lot of shit that Kareem would say to kids and stuff in fucking, airports that were asking for fucking autographs and stuff, he was a bitter motherfucker. And I'm not a big fan of his. So I don't mind the Social Justice Award, but they should probably name it after somebody else because that guy wasn't exactly a saint. Yeah.
I heard the same things. And it's just that just tells you where society is. He's the pinnacle of an award that it's just wrong. I heard exactly the same things. I know people that have dealt with him that are not huge fans of the whole human being piece, but he's the pinnacle of a human being award. Essentially, that's what social justice is about, right? But I'd love to see the metrics of how you win this award. Carmelo Anthony has won the first year of it. I assume it's just a glorified community award, but it can be deemed for what social justice, cause you're pushing can be which way you lean politically. That's where I think there's a big problem with this award, but we know where the NBA leans generally, and that's all fine. But just a very interesting award, and yeah, 100% agree. A very interesting person to name the award after. Especially with even his comments. Like, one thing I don't agree with a lot with what LeBron does and says, but even his comments about LeBron recently, he just made I think he posted a meme, the Spider-Man meme, about something to do with COVID, that just was asking questions like why, because there's a lot of hypocrisy with COVID, with the rules, state to state. Everyone can agree with that. And he posted a meme about it, and Kareem had a shot at him saying that, he should know better, he shouldn't do that. So he's basically saying, LeBron, you can't have an opinion because it's not the same as mine. Well, I think that shouldn't be a guy that's on the forefront of an award. But who am I, Pro? I think I would have got one or two of them, Pro, early in my career, maybe. I think I had a chance. Pro. I think you're being a bit harsh.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe ending your career. I think you got a lot more mature as the years went on. So, I think you had a chance.
I had no fucking chance ever. All right, Pro, you're right again, man. Doc Rivers to replace Frank Vogel next season, apparently. That's a rumor. You broke this 2 times, I think, numerous months ago, and then broke it again a couple of weeks ago. But that is spinning around. We know Doc Rivers has an affinity to LA. The whole Philly thing that we spoke about last week about some players not quote-unquote feeling Doc Rivers. I think they have... if they win a championship, it's a whole different story, which I don't see them doing. But I think there's a high chance that good old Doc ends up back in LA, Pro.
Look, I think the biggest thing, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Now, a lot has to happen for that to go through. Like, first of all, I just don't think Doc is Daryl Morey's type of coach. Like, he wants either somebody that he's been comfortable with over the years, that he's worked with, like, hand in hand, like, somebody else, not him, obviously. I would say that his coach in Houston, D'Antoni, would definitely be a guy that, like, he would want, or an analytics young guy that he could just sort of, play the way he wants to play 1,000%. And I think that LA needs somebody that those players can't push around. And look, they're going to push them around anyway. Like, they'll try to push anyone around. But, like, the difference between, like, a Frank Vogel and Doc Rivers is, night and day, not in coaching knowledge. It's got nothing to do with that, but presence as a coach, to, like, those guys would think a little bit, like, 2 or 3 times before fucking with them, because Doc's not going to back down from anyone. And I think that's tough. That's a tough trait to have. Not many coaches in that league have that. Doc doesn't give a fuck who you are. He'll go back at you, but also he's a good players coach. He understands the whole thing. Like, he understands when players are up and players are down, and, when to push buttons and when not to. But I think that the Lakers it's a shit show anyway. They're not really going to win. Obviously, we talked about their roster in depth for months now, but they're not going to be a contender next year. But they need a coach that's not going to be a sinking ship right off the bat. And Doc, I think Doc's one of the only guys in the league that can go to LA and at least right the ship a little bit and not be railroaded. Like, I don't think that, like, LeBron or anyone else is just going to railroad the guy. Obviously they're going to have their power and all that, but Doc's not going to back down. And I think that they need a guy like that. But also Doc knows when to put his arm around you. It's not like he's going to be a militant drill sergeant. But I just figured that, like, Doc having a house in LA, he's been in with the Clippers so long that it's a high profile job. It's in LA. I'm not a big Philly fan as far as the area. Where the fuck would you rather be living, Bogues, right? And I think that, like, where that team's going in Philly, I think, not that LA is any better. Obviously, it's going to be a shit show in itself. I'd rather probably be going that way. And I think that, like, they'll pay what Doc needs, because that's the difference between hiring him and hiring another guy. Like, they're talking about different candidates, and the candidates on the list, you could just say, like, you read about the whole Westbrook thing about him just, like, saying, gave me the fucking ball, or whatever, when Vogel was trying to coach him in training camp.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not happening to Doc. You know what I'm saying? I've been around him. It's not happening with him. He'll fight a guy before that happens. I'm not saying he should fight Westbrook or anything, but like there are certain coaches, you know this. There are certain coaches, players check on a daily basis with no problem, and they don't think anything of it. And then there's those guys that they know that they really can't fuck with as much, you know. And I think Doc's one of those guys. There's only about 4 or 5 of them in the league, and I think Doc's definitely one of them. So, like I said, I don't think he's Red Auerbach or anything as a coach. I think he's a good coach, but I think his presence as a coach is much better. And I think that that's probably a pretty good marriage if it's going to go.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I mean, we've gone through this as well. Who else is out there, I guess? So, and they've basically put a line through Frank Vogel's name. He's done. Whether you think that's fair or unfair, who knows? The front office, though, Pro, at the Lakers has been rumored to be safe. That's a bigger head scratcher to me than Frank Vogel's job being gone, because Rob Pelinka and Kurt Rambis, they must have some photos of someone, Pro. Let's be honest. Like what atrocious roster formation. I mean, yeah, I just don't know how they survive if Frank Vogel doesn't. But that was leaked over the last couple of days. So that's obviously leaked by the Lakers and Genie and whoever else. But the fact that they're safe is head scratching.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few factors in play here. Rambis is best friends, wife is best friends with Jeannie Buss. That, like, billionaires, like, that's just sort of, they want to be around the people they want to be around. So they're never going to say no to the Rambises. They're going to stay as long as they stay. Pelinka's got Kobe. He's got Kobe blood in him with representing him and all that. There's history there. So that gives him more passes than the normal GM. And then also we've seen it with Clutch being able to set their lineup and set their roster. So, like, no one's really, like, on the LeBron piece, I don't think anybody's going to be pushing him out the door, because there's going to be no, like, this is not Jerry West, which Jerry West isn't going to let anyone, set his lineup for him. It doesn't matter who you are. He's going to do his job, and that's it. I think that those guys can get to Rob and sort of, set the roster, and he's okay with it, because he knows who's running things there. So I think that those factors are the reason why everybody's safe, and that's the thing. And it's, look, if it's any other team, if you look at the roster or you look at the moves versus the record in that high profile of a city, everybody's cleaned out. But it's LA. It's a shit show. It's like New York, like LA, New York. Those are 2 biggest shit show towns, on in the history of the planet when it comes to what happens inside those doors. So I'm not really all that sort of shocked that just sort of read about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm definitely not shocked. But I'm not shocked from that point of view. I'm shocked that they're still, from an NBA executive point of view and strictly based on performance, they shouldn't be in the job still. Like Frank Vogel isn't, they shouldn't be. But yeah, I'm not shocked at what you said, the whole relationship and friends and this and that. It does that is heavily bred in the NBA and in the celebrity world. So that's not a. By the way, do you know the Lakers, if they win their final game of the season tomorrow, Pro, it'll be their first win streak since January 7th. And that would be 2 in a row.
I did not know that, brother.
That was a good one. Yeah. January 7th. They haven't won 2 games in a row. So, well, the big game for them tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. Is there anyone LeBron doesn't want to play with, though, Pro? You mentioned this to me. I put on the run sheet. Is there anyone he doesn't want to play with? So this goes to a quote that he was Luka Doncic recently, Steph Curry, Kate. I mean, it's everyone, right?
Bogues, it's incredible. It's like, I thought the league expanded to like 38 teams. I really did, because it's like he wants to play with everybody. But, like, it's smart. Like, that's how LeBron's been. Like, LeBron's one of the smartest athletes I've ever seen with just doing things like this. I remember being around him in high school, and he went to the Adidas camp and he couldn't play, or he chose not to play. I think he had a broken wrist. But when he went to the Adidas camp, he was decked out in Nike gear. When he goes to the Nike camp, he's decked out in Adidas gear. And, they were obviously recruiting him because he was going to come up for the draft. but he's pretty smart with this. He's just sort of letting it out there that he wants to play with everybody. And again, I don't really think much of it, but it just sort of seems that, yeah, he just wants to play with everybody. And I think until something really gets some traction, either to, I don't know, force LA's hand to make a move, or say that because they don't want to lose him, or to see what other players say, yeah, let's sign this thing up and get this thing done. And obviously, it's been hooked on with Bronny and all that, drafted him to play and all that. It's just, it's amazing. Like every day it's like, yeah, I want to play with this guy. I wouldn't mind playing with this guy. It's not, no, I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm a Laker. It's, and look, he's free to say whatever he wants. It's like, oh yeah, that'll be good to play with him. I'd be excited. It's pretty funny though, to sort of see that stuff transpire on almost a daily basis.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of teammates one day, but I will give him credit. I thought for sure he would have came back to play in these last couple of games to get the scoring record, bro.
Yeah.
He needed
you got to give
play.
him some props now.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, he needed to play 2 more games, I think, to be eligible, and obviously continue to score at the clip he's been scoring. I thought for sure he would have chased that individual accolade, but I give him credit. He fooled me. I thought he'd be back for these, even the games that were pointless. So I think it comes down to the games didn't matter, and maybe he would have copped a bit of flack, but he elected not to do it. So I was definitely surprised at that, bro.
Yeah, we both did. I thought, like, I didn't really think much of it until you brought it up, and I'm like, yeah, like, why? I'm more for the like career points, like, play a bunch of games that don't mean anything because you want to rev up the career scoring. But for the season scoring, I'm like, why? Like, why do you care? But yeah, it's interesting. But I thought he would play for sure, but he's decided sort of to shut this thing down. It's a little surprising, without question.
No doubt. And then finally, that Lakers love, the Westbrook thing, man. So they've completely thrown him under the bus.
Yeah.
Some might be warranted, some might not be. Whatever you think about that is up to you. But this is the Lakers' MO. Westbrook is going to be blamed for this bad season. Already has been. So there's actually quotes. There's a quote that came out that said, "His personality fit worse than his basketball ability." That's tough because and I saw a stat yesterday. He was 18, 8, and 8 this season.
Mm-hmm.
Had a better shooting percentage than he was the last couple of seasons. So he didn't have a horrible year. Most players would give their right arm to average 18, 8, and 8, right? But I think just because his bar's been set so high, I don't think he was a good fit for these Lakers. I don't think he was good for the Lakers. But I'm just saying 18, 8, and 8, not horrible. Then on top of that, there were some clashes with Vogel to an extent. Vogel's apparently not a coach that's going to go back at players, but apparently Vogel made a point numerous times at training camp that anyone can bring it off the glass, meaning anyone that rebounds the ball can bring it up. LeBron, AD, Horton Tucker, you grab it off the glass, you go. Whereas Russ was kind of lying in the sand, said, no, you outlet it to me. I bring the ball up. That's my job. So on top of that, apparently LeBron James' passive-aggressive ways in the locker room didn't go too well with Russ, and there were reports that Russ was isolated. Even so, the teammates were kind of rolling him up, saying, yeah, man, the front office is fucking you over. Standard NBA bullshit, but this is all in the report that was leaked from somebody. So, I think unfair to Russ to an extent. Look, I think if Russ was parroting about style of play, that's not right neither. And their season was probably doomed before it began if that's the case. But, yeah, to throw him under the bus, individually for everything that went on is a bit harsh. I think there is some blame there, but never a dull moment in Lakerland, bro.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, whoa, I thought that right away. Like, they're definitely blaming it on him without question because he's the odd man out. And I don't know, like you said, warranted, not so warranted, who knows? But that's just sort of him. Like you said, Vogel's the type of coach, like one of the smartest coaches in the league, but doesn't have a lot of presence with like a tough guy, like tough on players if they go at him, especially superstar players. But that's just like how he's wired. And there's a lot of coaches wired like that. So it's not really a knock on him. Certain coaches are wired certain ways. Like there's the tough guys that would try to fight players and all that. There's the ones that can go back. There's the ex-players that people don't really check. There's the smart guys that are really elite in their ATOs, but they're just not, they just don't have it to do that, like to go back at guys. I could definitely see Russ saying that. And it's not, look, you got to choose your battles. You know that in the NBA, like, what are you going to do? Go off on him in the first practice for getting a little hand, get mouthing off a little bit. I mean, I don't know. It's Westbrook's been fiery his whole life. Like, he's been fiery with players, with coaches. That's just him. And look, when you coach in the NBA, you just got to deal with that. And look, we know it on a daily basis. There's times to like go back at a player, and there's times to like, you know what, do I really want to waste one of the bullets in my gun, like, in October, or because if I do this right now, one of my superstar players are going to shut me out, and then the season's going to be a shit show even before it became a shit show. Or do I just, maybe meet with them later about it, just let it go, meet with them later, or just let it go and then just do whatever. So, yeah, it just definitely seems like they were planting stuff on this guy as far as like being the worst teammate of all time. I think he's fiery. I think he's not the easiest guy to deal with, but I don't think he's the worst guy in the world. We've seen it. We've seen NBA players, that go into practice and like just sort of wasn't feeling it that day and go at the coach or go at another player or go at a staff member. It's good. Look, if I don't know, it didn't surprise me all that much. I didn't really think much of it, except like, yeah, they're really trying to pin this whole season on this guy, and just another day in the fucking shit show land, man. Yeah,
I just think it's unfair to throw it all on one player, but each to their own. Definitely not too sad about the Lakers' demise. So I'd be interested to see how they, like we've said, what they do to rebuild next season. They don't have much ammo in the arsenal to do anything really.
Bogues, but with all this media saying what happened with the Lakers, like, where were these fucking articles in December and January where anybody with two eyes at work could know that this team was heading for disaster? Now, the injury to Davis hurt, like it really hurt. And then obviously the LeBron injury, but Davis being hurt most of the year really hurt this team. And it probably would have been a little bit different. They probably would have been a 10-9-8 if Davis was healthy. But like, it seems like everybody's shocked and dismayed like a week ago that all of a sudden the Lakers are out of it. Like, where were they? They were never really in it all year. But like all of a sudden the media is like, maybe it's because they just need something to write about, but like, it's unreal that no one was like, yeah, they've been fucking awful all year. Like, terrible chemistry, terrible just sort of fit with players, and what do you expect? But it's funny just reading all these articles, like the 9 fundamental things that the Lakers didn't do this year, this, like, but these same outlets weren't writing anything about it. They were just worried about like LeBron's the first Akron player ever to score more than 22 points on 2 consecutive Thursdays. Like, they're worried about that stuff, except instead of saying, you know what, like, this team is headed for disaster right now, and there's really nothing they can do to fix it. But now all of a sudden it's like a shock. It's I don't know. It's an interesting deal, man.
Yeah, it was pretty silent. There were some journalists that were talking about it, but ESPN sure wasn't. They were all in camp. What's going on individually when they weren't playing well. But we'll finish off with some NBL Australian news. It looks like Southeast Melbourne Pro are officially out. They've had some bad losses over the last couple of weeks. That they need a lot of luck to get in. I think mathematically they might even be out. But what's interesting about that, they've had a very poor season. They're a very talented roster. Their head coach, Simon Mitchell, is reportedly being re-signed. I found that interesting considering their season. I thought they'd wait it out, maybe give him a year deal, but a multi-year deal coming up to Simon Mitchell, which is an interesting one, to say the least. Like I said, they haven't had a whole lot of success this season, but they were a decent team the year before. But that could be a case of not much else out there. Maybe we're seeing something that isn't coming out on the court, but they definitely didn't have a great year, and I'm sure Simon would agree with that. So don't spend it all at once. Simon Mitchell, top 4 is set. Positions are not pro. Big games next week. Illawarra and Sydney play twice to finish the season. That'll affect seeding greatly. 1 through 4 is pretty wide open right now. There can be a lot of movement in there. But the teams that aren't in the 4, the Jack Jumpers still have a mathematical chance. They're in 5.
Nice.
They still have but very, 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 very rare chance. But what I like now is the teams that aren't in the 4. It's a time kind of like in the NBA. You see a lot of young players that haven't had a chance to play early on in the season. Well, most teams do this. There's a few stupid teams that I'm not going to name them that still play their veterans 40 minutes a night when they mathematically have no chance for the playoffs. I don't know why. Maybe for the coaches' win records or whatever. But I like the teams that will roll out some lineups that are kind of they haven't done before. I watched the Brisbane Bullets last night. Played a really small ball lineup. So they're trying different things because they're mathematically eliminated anyway. So why not try it? But development players are getting minutes, young players, and I enjoy watching that. So for people out there that, are like, oh, my team's not in the playoffs, what's the point in watching these next 4 or 5 games? That's why you watch. You'll see some of your young guys. The smart teams will use those games to evaluate for next season. Hey, do we keep this young guy on? Do we sign him long term? Do we let him go? Whatever. And that's always a fun part. A silver lining for teams that aren't in the playoff mix, Pro.
Yeah, no question about it. Like, it's always good. Like I said, it's always good if you're not making the playoffs to sort of see where those young guys are at. And I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of those teams that continue to play their veterans, all these minutes when they're out of it mathematically, or they're already into a seed and they could just sort of get those young guys minutes. I'm obviously on the development side. So that's sort of where I'm, that's how I'm wired. And I think that, like, giving those guys the minutes are important, and especially the young guys that haven't gotten those minutes all year. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
No doubt. Fun to watch. All right. Useful, useless, Pro. And then we'll get to our fact or fake news. But I've got some good ones this week. Sacramento Kings, Pro, have missed the playoffs for their 16th straight season. That is the longest streak in NBA history, Pro. Useful, useless.
Total useful. If I was that whole outfit, I would watch the Seinfeld episode with George Costanza where he does everything the opposite. And then he finally starts fucking breaking through on some good luck. So whatever they think that they should do, just do the complete opposite and they should be fine. But that's unbelievable. With that
16 straight seasons.
That's a joke. With that following in that market where you can't, with the history of that team that they did for so long, winning with the Pager and those guys in Vlade, that they can't make the playoffs one time in 16 years. Says a lot. Now, I think that they might be turning a little bit of a corner with some of the players that they have, but not much of a corner.
Maybe you're playing next season.
Play-in. Maybe there'll be a play-in to the play-in next season, but I think it's useful for sure because I think it just goes to show you where they've been the last decade and a half.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've just been bad. A guy, Harrison Barnes, is stuck there, so hopefully they can see some sunshine into that tunnel. But it's just tough to watch. I mean, they had a really good 90s, early 2000s era, and then just fallen off a cliff since then, and just haven't been able to. And I don't get the whole hate with Sacramento. I don't think it's it's obviously a small city, but it's good weather. It's still an hour plus from hour and a half drive from San Francisco if you want to go party and do your thing. So it's not I don't think it's a bottom 5 city like some people do. Some NBA players do. I think it's a decent place to live. So I just can't understand why some players are completely anti-going there. Front office doesn't help. All right, next one. Donovan Mitchell, Pro. Did you see this stat? I'm sure you did. All right. Donovan Mitchell averages 2 passes a game to Rudy. Not assists, Pro. Passes. Joe Ingles still has more total assists this season to Rudy as of today, and Joe Ingles was traded, around the deadline? He hasn't played in Utah for 2 months. He still has more total assists than Donovan Mitchell does to Rudy Gobert. Useful or useless?
Bogues, you tell me. Useful, because you pass to him twice a game.
That's
one of the best lob threats. Yeah, like one of the best lob threats in the NBA. Like, you're not going to throw in the ball one time, for
even in transition, just off a handoff, like pitch back handoff, like throw back to Rudy, run off for a handoff. You haven't even got 2 of those a game. Like, what do
you think that is, Bo?
I mean, people say, he's purposely not doing it. I just don't think, like I've said, this is where the loss of Joe Ingles hurts him. Donovan Mitchell's not a great creator for others. Not a great lob thrower for Rudy. That was Joe Ingles' elite at both those things. Really good passer out of the pick and roll. Really good, he'd drag out the big on a pick and roll enough to throw the lob to Rudy. Conley's good at that as well. I just don't think Donovan's good at it. I don't think it's necessarily down to I'm looking Rudy off. But, I mean, I know they don't respect Rudy on the block. There's numerous times where he's 1-5 switch, he rolls and he ducks his guard in and he's got him basically 2 feet from the basket on his back and they look him off and don't throw it to him. So it's a strange stat. I think it's just a random anomaly, but that can't be good. That can't be good, and we know their relationship isn't great. We know they don't get along well, but 2 passes, man, like 2 assists would be low to an extent. Like for a good rolling big like Rudy, you should be getting him 2 lobs a game if you're Donovan Mitchell going, especially
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, especially with how well you look at D-Wade Shaq relationship, and the similar players D Wade and Donovan. They go downhill so well. They got the Euro. They can dunk on you. They can absorb contact and finish. The difference is D Wade could absorb and throw a lob up, and happily do that. Donovan hasn't shown that yet. That's probably the next phase of his game. But that's a glaring stat in my opinion. Very useful, but not a positive one, bro.
No, it's not. It's a weird one. It's strange, but look, like I could see if he only threw like 1 assist a game or whatever. Like, but you only. I'm not into conspiracy theories to this level, but like it is a little glaring to, like I said, one of the best lob guys in the NBA, guys like 9 feet tall. Why you wouldn't throw it to him, like you said, in transition when you get into the basket and that like and they help up, and then you just sort of like dump off to the big like. Out of a dunk or out of something, but you're only passing to him twice. Yeah, that's a little weird.
Very weird. Very weird. All right, next one. The Nets trailed by as much as 21 points in the third quarter tonight and came back to win against the Knicks, 110-98. They're the 4th team with multiple 20-point comebacks versus a single team in the last 25 seasons. Brooklyn also beat New York on February 16th after trailing by 28. Useful or useless, bro?
I think it's useless. Although you did lose me. Like literally, it's like an SAT question. I have no fucking idea what you were trying to say on that one. Not that it had nothing to do with you. It's just more me being a moron. But yeah, to me,
so basically saying the Nets trailed by, big deficits. They're the 4th team with multiple 20-point comebacks versus a single team in the last 25 seasons.
Oh, a single team. I get it. I thought you
them versus it's the Knicks versus the Brooklyn. It's useless as fuck.
Yeah,
it's the dumbest.
Yeah,
and it's ESPN stats and info. It's just stupid. Like who even we talk about looking up random stats. That takes a cake. So we haven't had a useless one in a while, but that one is useless as all hell.
Stop swimming to ESPN stats. All right, we're a stat muse company. That's what we do business.
But you know what, bro? We haven't had a useless one in a while, so I was like racking my brain. I got to find it because they're onto us, I think. Because I used to see useless stats every other day. As soon as we've started our segment, bro, the useless stats have dried up. They're scared, bro. They're scared. So I actually had to go to. StatMuse doesn't have very many useless ones, and when they do, they're obviously tongue in cheek, where they're making fun of something. Whereas ESPN. They post these with a straight face sometimes. Like,
we give StatMuse so much love. There should be an intern giving you 5 a week of useless stats just for the free love we give them. I mean, what other podcasts? You think Bill Simmons is giving them free love like this? Fuck no. He wouldn't cross the street for less than $30,000. We're giving them free love on a weekly basis. Do you think they could be feeding some good ones?
Never know. Maybe in the future. Last one. Nikola Jokic, bro, the first player in NBA history ever to have 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 500 assists in a single season, bro. Useful, useless?
You know me with the first player ever to do this, but this one actually is pretty good. Pretty impressive. The first person ever. And then when you throw up those numbers, like points, rebounds, assists in a season, I'm still not in love with them, but that's a decent stat that you're you know what? That's pretty fucking hard to do. I would say it's useful, but that's just me. What do you
that's
say?
useful. That's a legit first ever. This isn't a, all while scratching his left ear while shooting free throws. This is one of those stats.
Exactly.
This is a legitimate 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 500 assists in a single season. That's hard to do, man. And think about how long this game's been played. Think about Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, LeBron James. All these players, and not one of them have done it. That's very, very impressive in my opinion. So a big useful on that one, Pro. What do you have this week for your fact or fake news?
All right, folks. A play-in team, since we're on our playoff kick today. First question, a fact or fake news. A play-in team will win a round in the playoffs this year. An actual round, not a play-in round.
You put me on the spot because the only team that would potentially do it, I think, is Brooklyn. And I said they wouldn't win a championship. So I'm going to have to fake news it just based on not being a hypocrite. But if there's one team that's going to do it, it's going to be Brooklyn. But I will say fake news. You?
I'm going to say fact on this one just because, shit always happens like that. Like, there's always somebody that upsets somebody. And I don't know who it's going to be. It's probably going to be Brooklyn, if anybody. I can't see anybody else really doing it. Maybe the Clippers. But I'm going to say that there's going to be one of these series that, because to me, I think the three teams out of the 3 out of the 8 that could potentially win a series. Minnesota, because they're just young and and they've got talent. The Clippers, because, Paul George, plus the rest of the guys, I could see maybe getting something done there. And then obviously Brooklyn. But I'm going to say, fact, I think one of these teams are going to win at least one series, one true series in the playoffs. Again, because I'm so fucking bad with predictions, I might as well just fucking throw anything throw enough shit against the fucking wall, see what sticks.
Yeah, and the Clippers. One thing about the Clippers, they could face Memphis, who haven't been there yet, haven't been deep into the playoffs. So,
right.
Whether that plays into some people's thoughts about who's going to win that series, it could,
And what if Kawhi plays? Exactly. What if out of the blue?
Yeah, just rocks up. Robot man plays 40 minutes like he hasn't missed a beat. Yeah, exactly. So, I like that. I like those teams. So I agree.
All right. Both number 1 seeds will make the finals this year. Fact or fake news?
So what's that? Miami and Phoenix. I think Phoenix make it. Oh, man, tough one. Fake news. There's always one that gets bounced. So based on history, you need to do some stat muse and find out how many times that has happened, bro. One versus
yeah, they better
one.
step the fuck up.
How many times a straight 1 versus 1 has made the finals? But I would say fake news. I think one will get bounced. I think it'll be in the East.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say that someone's going to get bounced. I'm still going to go because I'm so bad picking teams. I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks in the finals.
Wow.
Not winning it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what?
They're going to be the Phoenix Suns. Wow.
Dude, I just threw a fucking hanging curveball to Barry Bonds in the steroid era. I know you're going to go, pro's a homer for Dallas. First of all, they fired me. I talked to about 3 people in the whole organization. So it's not like I'm have these banners on my wall for the Mavericks. I do think that they're a team that can either get bounced in the first round or fucking make the finals. That's just how they are. Who the fuck knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm bullshit. But I'm telling you, I have a feeling this year they have a lot of similarities to that 2011 team where they didn't have an overabundance of talent. They just had a bunch. They just had a bunch of guys that play together. They obviously got Luka, and they got a bunch of guys that play together. They can make shots. They could do some things. I'm telling you, if there's a team that's going to – and Miami's not playing great either, and they are playing great now, but Milwaukee could beat them, or Boston could get there. It's a weird year this year, Bogues. I don't think that – I definitely think that both teams are there will not be 2 number 1 seeds in the championship. I don't know. Maybe it's Phoenix. Maybe it's not, but I have no idea. We'll see.
We will see. Dallas to the finals, Pro. You heard it here first. I've got a fact or fake news for you, Pro.
Nice.
Is John Wall the worst contract in NBA history, Pro? Now, before you get rolling, let me read you this. He signed a Supermax, 4 years, 171 million. In 2019 and 20, he played 0 games. In 2020-21, he played 40 games. In 2021-22, he played 0 games. Now, there is a bit of an asterisk on this past season because they shut him down for most of it. But that contract, fact or fake news, is the worst in NBA history.
You know, Bogues, I think that because of the money, like the money being elevated, that it is definitely the worst contract of all time. With the money being elevated and the lack of playing on that contract, I think it is by far the worst contract in NBA history. Now, you could say that there are other contracts like, you know, if you did them, like if you upped it, you know, over the years, like compared to a contract that was done in the 90s or whatever, you could say that. But I think that this is definitely the worst because the guy's never barely ever played. I think it's one of the worst.
Played 40 games in 3 years of the $171 million deal. So, and looks like who knows what's going to happen next season. He's either going to get bought out or sat anyway. But yeah, I think just on the grand scale of value, it is fact. It's bad. And yeah, you just hope he gets it back together, gets back on a roster and can play. But man, that's a lot of money that was just lit on fire for a few teams that took those salaries. So interesting one.
Folks, it's so funny. I just looked up worst contracts in NBA history. So I'm scrolling down, like they got like Gilbert Arenas' deal. They got all these guys. Then I see a picture of you. I'm like, what, Bogut? But no, you're getting pinched by Luol Deng and Timothy Mozgov, and it was their contracts combined. So you have nothing to do with it, but I thought it was your contract. But they said the Mozgov and Luol Deng 4 years, $136 million combined was the worst tandem of contracts in history of mankind. I thought they were killing you for a second. I thought Yad Baka was going to get an email from your tweet, but
what was I in that photo?
What?
I was in the photo.
You were in the photo, but it wasn't you that they were talking about. I thought it was. I didn't read the headline. They had like 9 contracts. Yeah, clickbait for sure. But it was Mozgov and Deng because those guys are pinching you out for a rebound, and they were talking about those two being the worst combined contract in the history of the league.
Hey, I'll change spots, John Wall. I'll take the $171 million, and you can call me the worst contract in NBA history for the next 50 years.
You think anybody gives a fuck, Bogues? Like if you were a complete fucking bust and you made $170 million on a contract, do you think like you give a fuck that, all right, I'm a bust, blah, blah, blah. Like Greg Oden or Sam Bowie or someone who was like injury riddled that couldn't get out of their first contract and really sign a deal for another contract. Like those guys like didn't make the money and they were killed every year about being a bust. These guys made 9 figures, 9 fucking figures. I'd have 2 middle fingers up all day, every day. Like I don't really give 2 fucks.
Yeah, I'd make a bust out of straight gold of myself and put a statue in my yard with $171 million. Someone called me a bust. 100% agree. Yeah. Like, who gives a shit? Like, that players can do whatever he wants for the rest of his life and never have another worry. I think most people out there would agree, most of our listeners would agree that if Stephen A. Smith was going to get on ESPN every morning and call you a bust, would you be okay with that for $171 million? I think people would be okay with it for $1 million. I'd gamble, but
I'd be sprinkling gold dust on my Twinkies, laughing hysterically at fucking Stephen A. And I'd be joining in. All right, so fuck off. Yeah, 9 figures. Sign me up.
Where do I sign? All right, that wraps up episode 60. Thanks for joining us. Send us your feedback. Send us some fact or fake news, some useful, useless stats. We appreciate all the support at Rogue Bogues, at Hoop Consultants, at Andrew Bogut. We'll see you next week, bro.
Folks, take it easy. We'll see you next week, brother.